All right, let's talk tomatoes. You plant them, you water them, you wait patiently, and then you get like 6 tomatoes from a plant that's supposed to give you pounds and pounds of fruit. Sound familiar? Meanwhile, you see pictures online of people with tomato plants absolutely loaded with fruit, and you're wondering what kind of magic fertilizer they're using. Here's the thing, it's not magic, and it's not some expensive fertilizer. There's one simple trick that serious tomato growers use that literally doubles or triples your harvest, and most beginners have no idea it exists. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what it is and how to do it right. And stick around, because I'm also going to share the biggest mistake people make when they try this technique, a mistake that can actually hurt your plants instead of helping them. You definitely want to avoid that one. The game-changing trick pruning suckers. So what's this revolutionary trick? It's called sucker pruning, and once you understand it, you'll never look at your tomato plants the same way again. Here's what's happening in your tomato plant that you probably don't know about. Everywhere a leaf stem meets the main stem of the plant, a little shoot starts to grow. This shoot is called a sucker, and if you let it grow, it'll become a whole new stem with its own leaves, flowers, and eventually fruit. Sounds great, right? More stems mean more tomatoes. Except, not really. Here's the problem. Your tomato plant has a limited amount of energy from the sun, water, and nutrients in the soil. When you let every single sucker grow, the plant is trying to support way too many stems, way too much foliage, and way too many fruits. The result? Everything stays smaller. You get more tomatoes, but they're tiny. The plant becomes a tangled jungle that doesn't get good air circulation, which invites diseases. And the fruit takes forever to ripen because the plant is spreading its resources too thin. When you prune suckers strategically, you're directing the plant's energy into fewer stems and bigger, better fruit. You get tomatoes that are larger, that ripen faster, and that taste better because the plant isn't stressed from trying to do too much at once. This is the difference between professional growers and home gardeners. Professionals prune suckers religiously. Home gardeners often don't even know what a sucker is. How to identify suckers? It's easier than you think. Identifying suckers is actually super simple once someone shows you what to look for. Let me break it down. Look at your tomato plant's main stem. Now look at where a leaf branch connects to that main stem. That connection point is called the leaf axil. Right in that V-shaped space between the leaf stem and the main stem, you'll see a little shoot starting to grow. That's your sucker. At first, when the sucker is tiny, it might just look like a little bump or a small leaf, but if you let it go, within days it'll grow into a full stem with its own leaves. Left unchecked, that sucker will become as thick as your main stem, and then it'll produce its own suckers, and before you know it, your tomato plant looks like a bush with stems going every which way. The easiest way to spot suckers is to trace each main stem and each leaf branch. Stems and leaves are supposed to be there. Anything growing between them that's a sucker. Some people get confused and think the main stem is a sucker, or they accidentally remove actual leaf branches. Here's how to tell the difference. Leaf branches come off the main stem and immediately have leaves on them. Suckers come out of the axil between the leaf branch and the stem, and they grow at a 45-degree angle, splitting the difference between the two. When A&D, how to remove suckers. The best time to remove suckers is when they're small, like when they're only 2 to 4 inches long. At this size, you can literally just pinch them off with your fingers. Grab the base of the sucker between your thumb and forefinger and snap it off with a quick sideways motion. It breaks right off, clean and easy. Some people use pruning shears or a knife, and that's fine too, especially if the sucker has gotten thick. But removing them when they're small and tender is way easier, and it's less stressful for the plant. Plus, you don't need any tools. You can just walk through your garden with your morning coffee and pinch off suckers as you go. Do this regularly, like once or twice a week during the main growing season. Tomato plants grow fast, especially when the weather is warm, and those suckers pop up constantly. If you wait too long between pruning sessions, those suckers get big and thick, and removing them creates a larger wound on the plant. Early morning is a great time for sucker pruning, by the way. The plant is turgid, full of water, so the suckers snap off cleanly. And if you do create a wound, it has all day to dry and seal before the cooler, damper evening when fungal diseases are more likely to take hold. After you pinch off a sucker, don't leave it on the ground near your plants. Those cut pieces can harbor diseases, especially if you're dealing with any fungal issues. Toss them in the compost bin or trash them, just get them away from your tomato plants. Determinate versus indeterminate why it matters. Now here's something crucial that people mess up all the time. Not all tomato varieties should be pruned the same way, and this comes down to whether you're growing determinate or indeterminate tomatoes. Determinate tomatoes, sometimes called bush tomatoes, grow to a certain height and then stop. They set all their fruit at roughly the same time, you get one big harvest, and then the plant is pretty much done. Most determinate varieties only get 3 to 4 feet tall. Roma tomatoes are usually determinate, for example. For determinate tomatoes, you want to be really careful with sucker pruning. These plants have a programmed size and fruit set, and if you prune too aggressively, you're actually reducing your harvest. With determinates, just remove the suckers below the first flower cluster and leave everything above that alone. Indeterminate tomatoes, on the other hand, are the vining type. They keep growing taller and taller all season long until frost kills them or you run out of vertical space. They produce fruit continuously rather than all at once. Most heirloom varieties and many cherry tomatoes are indeterminate. Indeterminate tomatoes are where sucker pruning really shines. These are the plants you want to prune regularly and aggressively. Most growers will prune indeterminate tomatoes to 1 or 2 main stems and remove everything else. Check your seed packet or plant tag to see which type you've got. This information is usually listed right there, and it makes a huge difference in how you should prune. The 1-stem versus 2-stem method. For indeterminate tomatoes, you've got 2 main pruning strategies, 1 stem or 2 stems. The 1-stem method is exactly what it sounds like. You choose the strongest main stem and remove every single sucker that appears. This focuses all the plant's energy into one vertical stem. You get fewer tomatoes overall, but they're typically larger and they ripen faster. This method is great if you're growing in limited space, if you want the earliest possible harvest, or if you're growing indoors or in a greenhouse where space is at a premium. The 2-stem method gives you a bit more production, while still keeping the plant manageable. You let the first strong sucker below the first flower cluster grow and become a second main stem, and you remove all other suckers. Now, you've got 2 main stems, each producing flowers and fruit, but the plant is still organized and not overgrown. Which method is better? It depends on what you want. If you're growing beefsteak tomatoes and you want those massive fruits, go with 1 stem. If you want a bit more total yield and don't mind slightly smaller individual fruits, go with 2 stems. Either way, consistency is key. Once you decide on your approach, stick with it for that plant. Don't switch back and forth between letting suckers grow and removing them. That just confuses the plant's energy allocation. Supporting your pruned tomatoes. Here's the thing about pruned tomato plants: they get tall. Like, really tall. An indeterminate tomato pruned to 1 or 2 stems can easily reach 6, 8, or even 10 feet high by the end of the season. This means you need serious support. Those flimsy wire tomato cages from the hardware store? Forget about it. They might work for unpruned bush tomatoes, but a tall, loaded, indeterminate tomato will tip those over like they're made of toothpicks. You need either tall, sturdy stakes or a strong trellis system. For stakes, use something at least 6 to 8 feet tall, driven at least a foot into the ground. Wooden stakes, metal T-posts, or bamboo poles all work. As the plant grows, Tie the main stem to the stake every foot or so using soft garden twine or tomato clips. Don't tie too tight, you want to support the stem without strangling it. Some people use the Florida weave method, which is where you run twine horizontally between stakes and weave it around the tomato stems as they grow. This supports multiple plants with one system and works great for row planting. Whatever support system you use, get it in place early. Trying to stake a 6-foot-tall tomato plant without damaging it is like trying to put pants on a toddler who doesn't want to cooperate possible, but way harder than it needs to be. The lower leaf removal trick. While we're talking about pruning, here's a bonus trick that goes hand in hand with sucker removal: lower leaf pruning. As your tomato plant grows taller and starts setting fruit, the lower leaves near the ground become less productive. They're shaded by all the foliage above them, so they're not doing much photosynthesis, but they're touching the soil or close to it, which makes them vulnerable to soil-borne diseases like early blight and septoria leaf spot. Once your tomato plant is established and at least a couple feet tall, start removing the lowest leaves. You can remove everything up to about 6 to 12 inches from the ground. This improves air circulation around the base of the plant, reduces disease pressure, and doesn't significantly impact the plant's ability to produce energy since those leaves were already shaded and less productive anyway. Just don't go crazy and strip the whole plant. You need those upper leaves to power fruit production. A good rule of thumb is to never remove more than about a third of the plant's foliage at any one time. And here's a little workout tip for you. If you want to get a good arm workout, try pruning lower leaves on 20 tomato plants in one go. Your shoulders will definitely feel it the next day. You'll be reaching, squatting, and twisting around those plants like you're doing some kind of gardening yoga routine. The big mistake: pruning too much too fast. All right, now, for that mistake I mentioned at the beginning. This is something overacre gardeners do all the time, especially when they first learn about sucker pruning and get really excited about it. The mistake is removing too much growth too quickly. Someone will learn about sucker pruning, go out to their garden, and just start hacking away, removing suckers, lower leaves, everything in sight. They think they're helping, but what they're actually doing is shocking the plant. Plants need leaves for photosynthesis. When you remove a huge amount of foliage all at once, you're drastically reducing the plant's ability to make food for itself. This stresses the plant, slows down growth, and can even cause existing fruit to crack or develop blossom end rot because the plant can't maintain consistent water and calcium uptake when it's shocked. Here's the right approach: prune gradually and consistently. Remove a few suckers and maybe a few lower leaves each time you check the plants we're talking, every few days or once a week. Keep the plant balanced. Don't leave it looking like a bare stick with just a tuft of leaves at the top. Also, don't prune heavily right before a heat wave or during drought stress. The plant needs all the leaf surface it can get to stay cool and manage water. Wait for milder conditions or make sure the plant is well watered before you do any significant pruning. What to do with pruned suckers bonus tip. Here's something kind of cool that a lot of people don't know. Those suckers you're removing, if they're healthy and at least 4 to 6 inches long, you can actually root them and grow them into new tomato plants. Just stick the sucker in a glass of water on a sunny windowsill, and within a week or two, you'll see roots forming. Once the roots are about an inch long, you can plant that sucker in soil and treat it like a regular tomato transplant. This is an awesome way to extend your tomato season. Maybe your main plants are starting to slow down in late summer, but you've got these rooted suckers that are just getting going. Or maybe you just want more plants without buying more seeds or transplants. The rooted suckers will be genetically identical to the parent plant, so if you've got a tomato variety you absolutely love, this is a free way to make more of them. Look, tomato growing doesn't have to be complicated, but these little techniques make a massive difference between a mediocre harvest and a truly incredible one. Pruning suckers is probably the single most impactful thing you can do to improve your tomato production, and it costs you nothing except a few minutes of time each week. Start paying attention to those suckers. Get in the habit of doing a quick walkthrough of your tomato plants every few days and pinching off anything growing in those leaf axils. Keep your plants to 1 or 2 main stems. Support them well. Remove the lower leaves as they grow. Do these things consistently, and you'll be shocked at how much better your tomatoes perform. The first time you harvest a massive, perfect tomato from a properly pruned plant, you'll wonder why nobody told you about this years ago. Well, now you know, and trust me, once you see the results, you'll never go back to the tangled tomato jungle approach. So here's my question for you. Have you been pruning suckers on your tomatoes, or is this totally new information? And if you've tried it, what differences did you notice in your harvest? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you've got your own tomato tricks, share those too. We're all learning together here. Happy growing, and here's to your best tomato harvest ever.